Ladies and gentlemen, this is Firecrackers. In the part 2, we will switch and cross over to security matters. We do have new service chiefs. Great news after so much pressure and demands from Nigerians home and abroad. Plus, the crisis between herders and farmers gets our attention on the program today with reports of another crisis or attack rather in Igogo area again, as farmers had to flee as herdsmen allegedly attack that area again. We'll get some perspective tonight. We'll look at what exactly the peace meetings, which we've seen a series or a number of them, what exactly is the fate of this conflict moving forward. That in a moment. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
And we can only at this stage pledge to do the utmost best to bring security, safety and security to lives and properties across the country. On behalf of the service chiefs, I'm assuring the nation peace and security.
The president, so that he can know his service chiefs and CDS, and in the course of what we have done, the president has reiterated his mandate to this country.
For staying with us. This is Firecrackers and we're live from our studio here in Lagos, Nigeria. Well, a moment ago we had to focus on the petroleum and industry bill plus the oil sector. We had to speak with stakeholders from the Niger Delta region and stakeholders from the oil and gas sector. We'll get to give you their names again just before we round off on the show. But joining me tonight to shed light on the crisis in Igogo area of Oyo State again, as there are reports of attacks from herdsmen, allegedly attacks, of course, alleged attacks rather from herdsmen, is Dr. Ade Tokumbo Pez. He is a public affairs analyst. He is also a stakeholder from the People's Democratic Party. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us on the program tonight. I understand you were part of a particular meeting last week, Sunday, because you were supposed to be on the show last week. I remember you were in a particular meeting in Oyo State. Well, there have been a lot of meetings as regards the farmers and herders conflict. But what exactly is still playing out in that region?
Well, I was not at a meeting to discuss that issue. That's a private meeting, visit to Oyo State, Ibadan, last week. But I've been following all the discussions and the meetings going on. And this is an issue that we've been talking about for a long time. Those of us who promote restructuring of the Nigerian state, and that unless we have state police, we are not going anywhere. By the way, the governor of Oyo State has stated on several occasions that we must restructure the Nigerian Federation, and one of the things that he feels and that we've always talked about is that there must be state police. You know, you talk about service chiefs, the change of service chiefs, that does not even affect security internally. it's as if we, as a country, as if we have no brain box. I mean, you're talking about changing the head of the Navy, the head of the Army, the head of the Air Force. What has that got to do with security and all these problems we have? That pertains to external security, Boko Haram, for instance, and changing changing one army general for another army general doesn't really solve the issue. I mean, that's just on one point before we come to the crisis, you and the herdsmen problems. So if you look at security, the way the government is dealing with it, it's there's no sense in it because the security issue that is affecting Oyo State, is affecting Ogun State, is affecting Ondo State. It all has to do with internal issues, policing, state policing. If we don't have enough police, if we don't have state police, we cannot we cannot deal with these issues.
Now you've mentioned state police, I mean, because it was a subject of deliberation in the Senate very recently. The senators are divided about the issue of state police, and I'm wondering, why is that still a subject of controversy?
Well, the National Assembly will be divided over the issue of state police because they're divided over the basic fundamental concern of restructuring the federation. There are people who feel that the way the country is now, it works in their favor. They control the security and they control all the funds attached to it, all the power and influence, so they want to keep it that way. But we argue from the point of efficiency and progress for the country. If we don't have state police, we're not going anywhere. Let me give you some examples. It's incredible. Where we are, it's as if we don't have police in this country. Do you know that there are only 371,800 policemen in the whole Nigeria to police 150 million people? Let me give you another example. Statistics. Lagos State has 20,000 police at the most. 20 million people, that's 1,000 people to one policeman. It's unheard of. So we really don't have police presence. You saw what happened with the NSAS situation. It was as if there was no police. The police was under attack. They were running for their lives. They couldn't defend themselves. So this is why we argue. What can you do in Oyo State? A big state like that, when the police can't even go in and find out what is happening.
Doctor,
are you going to send the army?
Doctor, I'm wondering, you're a member of the People's Democratic Party. In Oyo State, the governor is PDP. How has the governor handled, as the #1 chief security officer, how has he handled the affairs of security in that state?
Well, the governor is doing all he can, and he's been conducting all these meetings, all these negotiations. But the reason why he has said that we need state police is because he knows he doesn't have enough security. What is he going to do? I understand there was 200 houses that were attacked over the weekend, or yesterday. So the governor will do all he can. The governor has goodwill, so a lot of people will work with him. This issue of herdsmen is an opportunity for us to really understand where we stand as a country. How do you know that those herders, those cattle rearers who are in the prohibited natural reserve, how do you know where they come from? There are a lot of herders too, in Oyo State, in Ogun State, Ondo State, all over the Southwest. They are herdsmen also who are from indigenous communities. So we shouldn't turn this into a North versus South issue. It is not a question of Hausa Fulani versus the rest of us. It is so much deeper than that. And when you have a president who doesn't understand that issue, that's where we have the problem. Because this thing is bigger than everybody. The herdsmen are only looking for business. They want to feed their cattle. And the farmers will protect their farm. So it is incumbent upon government to have a system in place that will take care of everybody. The way we are now, the federal government has failed the herdsmen and has failed the communities, has failed the farmers.
I understand that Oyo State and Ogun State are making plans to register herdsmen so that they can outlaw the criminal element amongst them. How optimistic are you? Do you subscribe to this registration which the Oyo and Ogun State governments are making plans to?
You have, if I may say, very brilliant and very efficient and committed governor in Oyo State, and I hope also Ogun State. These governors want to protect their communities, so they're doing the best they can. After you've registered the herdsmen, and you have also made sure that they no longer go where they shouldn't go. They have all these instructions. How do you enforce the law? It's not about these herdsmen alone. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Pretty soon you're going to find people going into the natural reserve to build houses if they can't find land anywhere else. So how do you enforce the law is the problem. The fundamental issue is, and you know, the principal law enforcement agency in any country is the police. And what are we doing about the police? Nothing. We're saying we're changing service chiefs. What does that mean? What is the head of the Air Force going to do in this instance? So apart from Boko Haram and external forces, which they have failed totally, I must mention this. When Buhari got into government, he didn't say 2 months he was going to get rid of Boko Haram. This is going on 6 years now. So changing service chiefs doesn't solve the problem. Where is the equipment? Where is the materials they're going to use to combat this insurgency? Where is the motivation? Where is the training? And most importantly, this is something that, you know, after all these years of studying the situation, commenting about the situation, I've learned a lot. Do you realize that what is going on with Boko Haram in the Northeast, mainly, has a lot to do, the reason why Boko Haram has been so successful has to do with because they do not have police. If there's no internal security, internal security that has intelligence, that are trained to fish out criminals, how will the external criminals not succeed? That's why we cannot combat Boko Haram. It doesn't matter how many service chiefs they change. Nothing is going to change because there are many other things that we have to do.
Doctor, we'll come back to you. Wisdom, I believe you're still there with us, Wisdom from Auckland, New Zealand, because I was able to also study your thesis. You have made some very, very vital or valid points, rather, about the Boko Haram insurgents and all of that. But where you are receiving the news of what is playing out in Oyo and Ogun State, what are your initial thoughts?
Personally, I welcome the change of service chiefs. It's important whether you like it or not. When you bring in new service chiefs, it brings in new ideas, new perspective, and new ways of looking at the security situation. However, I agree that this will not solve this insecurity in Nigeria, whether the herdsmen, farmers crisis, or the insurgency, or the banditry. It will not, or the kidnapping around the country. It would not. It would not solve it. Now, again, the other guest talked about state police. My problem with the state, if we are talking about state police, that you don't have enough policemen, why don't we? I'm not against state police. Yes, we can have state police, but if it's about the number of policemen, that's why we are canvassing for state police. Why can't whatever funds the states want to use to pay these state police, Why can't these funds be harnessed and more police be employed at the federal level? Okay. But however, I'm not against the state police. My problem generally about this change of service chiefs, bringing up, buying more weapons, increasing the introducing state police, is that we are only concentrating on coercive means of solving these crises, this problem. No, we cannot solve this problem this way. It will not work until we go to the root cause. Why is it that herders and farmers are fighting? Is it why is it that Boko Haram has not been defeated? Why is it that you have kidnappers around the country? We must go to the root cause. We must address inequalities. We must address the economic situation. We must address the ideology that drives these kind of ideas. Until we address the root, whether you buy weapons or train the police, you are only trying to use coercive means to solve the symptoms instead of solving the basic problem of the country. You can hold meetings here and there and bring in weapons. It will not solve these things, like the case of Boko Haram. It will not. It will not. We can. If I can
thank you so much. I'm sure we need to wrap up on the show now because we are pressed for time. I wish we had time. We would have probably even asked you what exactly the root cause between the herders and farmers. What exactly is always the root cause of the problems? Can you comment on that in 30 seconds, if you can, if you may?
Yes. We can have, now you have farmers who want to protect their crops. You have herders who want to feed their cattle. Now, where do you expect the cattle to be fed? It is important. Until you are able to reorientate and retrain this herder to adopt a better way of feeding their cattle, they are going to continue to have problems with the farmers because they are going to continue to lead their cattle out there to different farms, to different places where they think they can get food. That's one of it. There are lots of other underground issues that drive these things. We cannot just employ more police so that they will stop them from moving around or stop those that kidnap people from.
Thanks for time, and we have to go now. Wisdom, but I would like to thank you most kindly for coming through for us. Wisdom Iyekepolo, all the way from Auckland, New Zealand, a PhD candidate in politics and international relations, University of Auckland. Thank you so much for joining us via Zoom tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, Doctor, as we round off now in 60 seconds or less, what are your concluding thoughts?
Well, when democracy was first introduced in the early days, 20th century even, people said this democracy is not really solving all the problems. And I will always quote what Winston Churchill said, that democracy is a terrible system. However, it's the best we have. I say the same for restructuring now. A lot of the problems we have in this country is because we left the system that worked for us in the 50s before independence, and we went to a unitary system of government to handle the situation of the Civil War. And after the Civil War, we never came back to review how we are going to run this country, because after the Civil War, the military continued. We have to restructure Nigeria to make it into a true federation, just as you have in the US. These cow herders and farmers, that was the same problem they had in the US. The same problem, you remember cowboys. They used to go around everywhere until government put a stop to it, realized that it's a business, run it as a ranch. as a business. If we do that, this is what he was trying to say, we will solve the problem. And the question of federal government having more police doesn't solve the problem of state police. That's what we have now. We have a system where the federal government has its own interest. Remember what happened with Governor Otto?
We have to go because
Yes.
we are definitely pressed for time. I'm wondering why the PDP never moved for restructuring in the 16 years of being in power. And then you've also commended the governor of Oyo State, who is a PDP member, how he has handled the crisis in that state, even though he has been a subject of criticisms. I guess we'll discuss this behind the cameras. But I'd like to thank you most kindly for coming on the program this evening. Thank you for agreeing to speak with Galaxy TV.
The PDP introduced
Aded Tokumbo,
the 2014
public affairs analyst and stakeholder
the 2014
of the Democratic Party. Ladies and gentlemen, that's about the size
conference.
of our package. We're back next week. Thank you so much for joining us again as we keep reflecting on issues of national interest. My name is Kelly Giga. Good evening.